Welcome to the Orlando Sentinel's editorial board interview with candidates in the Democratic primary for Florida Senate District 25, which covers Osceola and a little bit of Orange County. It's currently held by Democratic Senator Victor Torres, who is term limited out. The Democratic candidates in the primary are State Representative Kristen Arrington, first elected in 2020, Carmen Torres, who has a long history of voter and community advocacy and is married to the incumbent, and Alan Grayson, a former congressman who is very well known to Central Florida voters and is going to be competing in this race. Before we get started, we're just going to have a word about the ground rules. This is an interview, not a debate. We've asked the candidates not to engage in crosstalk or attempt follow-up, and they have agreed to that. With that, I'm going to dive into our first question. Democrats, as we all know, are seriously outnumbered in the Florida legislature, both chambers. And while they may retake some seats in this election, it's numerically unlikely that they will regain control in either the Senate or the House. Should you be the one representing District 25 next year, what would you do to make sure your constituents' viewpoints are respected, and how would you secure funding for their priorities? And let's start with Ms. Torres.
So just as my husband has done throughout the years with his open door policy, that's exactly what I would do as well. I would establish some relationships with the opposition, the opposite party, like I've done in the past, doing the county commissions and the school board meetings that I have attended and worked with across the board with Republicans at the helm. And so we would actually just like business as usual, right? Understanding what's at stake with the community. We have to come to terms with what is available and try to bring some sort of solutions with whatever it is that we are, attempting to do at the time. But it all stems in relationship building, okay? If you do not build those relationships, if you don't bring to the table what you bring, right? Because no one person has the answer to everything. There are solutions for everything, but people have ideas and they share those ideas and they come to a happy medium. This is how I would approach it. I've done that with the county commission boards. I've done that with the school boards. I've done that numerous places with organizations that I've been a member of, boards that I sit on. And that's the only way to, do business. You can't have one party cannot have everything and know everything. There are times where we can bring some amendments to the table and work with the opposition, with the Republicans, to bring whatever it is that we need to bring to our districts, just like we've done in the past. Just because we have a supermajority doesn't mean that we cannot communicate with the Republicans and bring those issues to bear. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. Representative Arrington, same question.
Thank you. Well, in my last 4 years serving in the State House, I've had to actually do that. Get anything done in Tallahassee, you have to have Republican support. And serving in the House this last session, I was a member of the super minority party, and I did have to work across the aisle. I was able to pass 4 bills this last session, and bring home $1 million of funding. I have those relationships with those members. Some of them are already over in the Senate. Some of them are running right now. So I will continue to work with them to bring home the funding and pass legislation for my district.
Thank you. Mr. Grayson, same question.
Well, all the other candidates in this race, including the Republicans, can only talk about how they wish they would do that or how they might imagine doing it. I'm the only candidate who can talk about how we did it. My last 4 years in Congress, the Republicans were in the majority. I'm a Democrat. I nevertheless passed 121 laws through the House, not 4, 121 laws through the House of Representatives, and every single one of those required substantial Republican votes, at least 35 of them. So what I did in my case was I found a way to get to yes by establishing somewhat unorthodox coalitions on particular votes. For instance, in the case of preventing offshore drilling here in Florida, I lined up the entire Florida delegation, including the Republicans, the entire California delegation, the entire New Jersey delegation. In another case where I wanted to start a $140 million program for naloxone to give this drug overdose treatment to all the first responders in the country, which was successful and was funded and still exists today. That program meant I had to sit down with the Republican chairman of the subcommittee and explain to him exactly why this needed to be done and how to do it. And what I found in many cases, although some of the chair people on the other side were not really interested, some of them were. Now, in Tallahassee right now, we've got an overwhelming lobbyist lockdown on the situation. And I get the sense, watching some of the hearings, that they would like to have an alternative. I'm talking about the Republicans and the Democrats. So what I plan to do is to come up with good, solid policy proposals exactly the way that I did, and find out which ones of these Republican leaders want to have an audience and get good things done. That's what I'm all about. I'm all about getting good things done. 121 laws passed in 4 years, more than any other Democrat and more than any other Republican. Only one person could be number one, almost never from the minority party, but that was me.
Thank you very much. I wanted to ask, Florida voters have the opportunity in the coming election in November to authorize legal marijuana for recreational use and ratify an amendment that protects reproductive rights, including abortion. But the devil is always in the details, and implementation of both these amendments is going to be an issue. I'd like you all to address what you think should happen with that and what you anticipate may happen with that process. And let's start with Representative Arrington.
Thank you. And thank you for the question. I'm in support of both amendments, although I understand that that's not part of the question. But looking forward to hopefully the voters passing both of those with 60% of support. I do have to mention that Republicans in Tallahassee the last few years keep trying to bring legislation to change that threshold for the constitutional amendment and looking to up it to 66%. So that might be something that we have to overcome in future years. But I look forward to sitting down with Republicans. I could say from some conversations that many of them do support recreational marijuana, and looking forward to sitting down with them just as I have on other issues and hashing out the details, like you said, and of course, getting all the stakeholders at the table. Thank you.
Thanks. Mr. Grayson.
I think it's giving a hostage to fate to suggest that we should be thinking about how to implement these things before they even pass. I'd like to instead explain why I think it's so important they pass. In a society like ours, there are things that are forbidden and there are things that are required, in both cases by laws, either federal laws or state laws. That broad vista in the middle, that broad spectrum or rainbow in the middle, is what we call freedom. And both of these issues belong squarely in the middle. The government has no business telling any woman whether or not she should continue her pregnancy or become a parent. Simply not the government's business. Not the government's business, not your business, not my business. Only the woman's business. Only. And that is the way every civilized society behaves. In addition to that, with regard to marijuana, although it's not quite as dramatic, nevertheless, that's a form of private behavior that does not affect others in any significant way. Therefore, it's part of freedom. It is a farce to see the Republican ideologues in the state put signs around the state celebrating the free state of Florida when a woman is not free to get an abortion. And both a woman and a man are not free to smoke in the privacy of their home marijuana. That's not freedom at all. They simply don't understand the concept of it. And that's the real shame of it. If I were married to someone who were pregnant, if I were a woman and I were pregnant myself, and somebody told me it's up to us, not you, whether to become a parent, I would say that's completely, completely ridiculous. And as much as my heart goes out to anybody who's the victim of rape or incest, it's true across the board. It doesn't matter if you get pregnant for a horrible, awful reason like that, or you get pregnant simply because you didn't have a prophylactic. It doesn't matter. The fact is, the choice to become a parent is your choice as the woman and nobody else's.
Ms. Torres.
So if you notice, every time something really important comes up, we have a citizens initiative. And this is really important because we just lost 50 years of reproductive rights for women. And so whether you implement it or not, I think you should. I think that we need this amendment. I think that this amendment is going to pass. I believe in overwhelming numbers. And I am pro women's rights all the way. I feel like I fought for these rights 50 years ago, and in a snap of a finger, it was gone. There goes the rights to my daughters, to my granddaughters, and every other female. With respect to marijuana, it's here. It's been here forever. So why don't we capitalize on making the marijuana available for medical, reasons? And if, we're going to have some recreation, we need to control that, right? Because it's already out in the streets. People get arrested for, a joint or whatever. Their entire life is completely, upended as a result. We need to change that. Let's pass this amendment and see how much we, with respect to revenue for this state, we can obtain and help in other areas with it. So as far as I'm concerned, I honestly believe that both amendments will pass, and they will pass overwhelmingly, and we need not to continue to increase the threshold, because most of the things that we need are usually done in a citizens initiative. And then they try to pass, like let's say, a poison pill, and try to, take that away from us. So I'm hoping that, yes, they pass, and that as a result of these two amendments, that the people of Florida come out in droves to vote. And I can see that happening in this election cycle.
Thank you. I will jump in to ask the next question. For decades, state funding has been used to support different local priorities, everything from septic to sewer projects, mental health programs, arts and culture opportunities. And this year, there were hundreds of millions of dollars slashed, especially looking at Governor DeSantis's veto of the entire cultural grant budget. How do you feel about the state helping with these local projects? Is it going too far, not far enough? How is what are your thoughts there? And we will start with Mr. Grayson.
Well, first, I want to point out that you're referring to what is at the congressional level referred to as earmarks or congressionally directed spending. And I never had one turned down, ever, the entire time that I was in Congress. And part of the reason for that is that I gave a lot of careful thought to what was the best use in the community. I ran against Dan Webster a few cycles ago. Dan Webster provided free lawn care to $1 million homes around lakes in Windermere with his earmark money. I didn't do things like that. I provided the only congressional earmarks in Central Florida history to Hispanic groups, for instance. A $10 million earmark to Celebration Hospital to develop an expertise in keyhole surgery that saved countless lives at this point, and other things that were for the greater good. That's the central concept that I apply when I'm looking at earmarks. What is the greatest good for the greatest number? I know that sounds a little old-fashioned and maybe, oh God, almost like something Abraham Lincoln would say. But that's how I feel, and that's how I operate. So I am very confident that all of my earmarks get approved. And as to whether they should be, the answer is yes, because the fact is that I know much more about the needs of Central Florida than I know about the needs of Miami. And I think the same thing is true of representatives and state senators from Miami. They know more about their areas than I know. And in fact, we were fantastic about bringing money to the district, not just earmarks, but also competitive grants. In my first year in Congress, we increased competitive grants by $100 billion. That's more than any state senator has in earmarks. We did that in my first year by competing, by actually helping people in the community to apply for these things and pushing them through the system. So I brought more than $1 billion to the district when I was in Congress. Nobody other than John Mica ever even came close to that among Central Florida congressmen. I'm sure I'll be able to do the same thing in the state Senate. And bear in mind, again, the Republicans were in charge when I did all of this in Congress.
Thank you for that. Ms. Torres, same question.
So, as an elected official, you want to take care of your district and you want to bring whatever the needs are into your district. Arts is just like anything else, right? And we want that in our districts. We want that for our communities. It's unfortunate that they cut the funding. And it's unfortunate that we don't have, like another pot that maybe like within the county that they can, help us with whatever funding that we were supposed to have or get. And they decided to veto that we would be able to fulfill whatever needs we had for that particular thing. But at the end of the day, we fight for the things that the districts need, and you may get it, you may not. The governor has that veto pen, and you want something to bring to your community, but at the end of the day, he has the capacity to deny it. So, like I said before, this comes down to the communications, the relationship building, and we wanted to bring in millions of dollars into the district. I have a list here of all the stuff that was vetoed. It's like ridiculous. But at the end of the day, we still were able, at least my husband was able to bring in a number of, things into the district, particularly, for the Council on Aging. He brought in like $300,000. And we're in a majority Republican, legislature. And he was able to bring into, the county also $1.4 million into the Whitted neighborhood for their water system. So yes, we have to work on that. Thank you.
Thank you for that answer, Ms. Arrington.
Thank you. And if I think I understand your question, Jay, there's maybe two parts on individual appropriations and also arts funding. I am in support of individual appropriations for members, just as, my opponents has said too. It's very important. We are the ones that know what the district needs. We're the ones that are here on the front lines, so to speak. However, individual member appropriations are not evenly balanced in the Florida legislature. When you look at the veto list or the pre-veto list, we do analyzing in our House Democratic office on how many Republican appropriations make it to the final budget and how many Democrat appropriations make it to the final budget. And it's definitely not in line with even our super minority numbers. So we do have a problem there. I would like for us as individual members, though, to have additional monies or appropriations for affordable housing, since that's such a crisis in so many of our communities. I've been able to bring home millions of dollars for multiple hotel motel conversions for affordable housing with wraparound services. And I think that that's something that could be great for other areas as well. So I am in support of individual appropriations, but then your other question was in regards to the arts funding that was cut by the governor, a part of our general revenue dollars. And I most definitely am not in support of that. I grew up as a dancer, an only child. My siblings were my colleagues. Just went to my dance teacher's 82nd birthday party. So I do know how important arts are to our students, our adults, and our community. So I most definitely was not in support of that veto. Thank you.
We're going to pivot to education. So in the coming school year, more than 400,000 students will be receiving one of the several public education vouchers, which are often used to pay private school tuition. The Sentinel's investigation, Schools Without Rules, found little to no accountability on how well the schools educated their students, nor how they spent voucher money. Does Florida do enough to ensure that schools accepting vouchers provide the high-quality education guaranteed in the state constitution? And we'll start with Ms. Torres.
So, like always, we've had this funding is called the Sadowski funds, right? For our funding. 80% of our students here attend public schools, but we don't have 80% funding. And I get that some families want something different, right? They have choices. They want choices. And so they look to these vouchers, and sometimes it'll work and sometimes it won't. The problem with that is that most of these voucher schools or these charter schools, the ones that are not monitored, they're not accountable. They don't have the teachers who are certified, and they're not accountable to anyone or anything. And 9 times out of 10, like in my area, they closed a charter school and they left all the children without, where to go next in the middle of a school year. And so at the end of the day, I am for public schools, but I would love, since we have 80% of the student population in public schools, to get 80%, of the funding. So, like I said before, you can have, and I think I misunderstood. I must have said Sadowski's fund, and that's not correct. That's for the housing. So let me take that back. But at the end of the day, we have this issue that we're not funding our public schools, and we're not paying our teachers the salaries that they deserve. So we're not getting quality teachers either. So there is a problem, and we have to address it. Charter schools are not for everybody, and charter schools are not accountable, most of them, to anyone. And so I think that at the end of the day, the student is who suffers the consequences, and also the parents in the middle of a school year if one of these schools, close. So that's my my take on that.
Ms. Arrington, the same question.
Thank you, Julie. Short answer, no, I don't think charter schools are being held to the same standards as public schools. Even before the legislation that was passed in the last 2 years, expanding the voucher program, we still have never properly funded our public schools and not given them the opportunity to succeed. So that is definitely a problem. We don't have teacher certification. They don't have the same curriculum. They don't even have the building standards. These schools do pop out throughout our district. They cause traffic problems. And although I understand parents want additional options, I think public schools do have that opportunity. Osceola has Osceola School for the Performing Arts, which I wish was available when I was a student, but also we have Neo City Academy, which is one of the top schools in the nation. Those are both public schools. So I think we need to be supporting and looking at more models like that for our students rather than just giving all this money to our charter schools. And I, of course, voted no for the recent legislation. I do not think it's fair, especially that we are giving money to millionaires for their students to go to private schools or religious schools, and that we don't have any stipulations or requirements on these vouchers. So I was against them before and still am, but we are definitely going in the wrong direction on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Mr. Grayson, what are your thoughts?
Well, it's a reflection of the 50-year-long Republican war against teachers, because they're unionized and they're the largest single group of unionized workers in the entire country. And therefore, according to the Republicans, they must be destroyed, the public teachers unions. And this is now reflected on a war, not just on teachers, but a war on children. This country, the United States, was the first country in the world to offer free public education. That was in the 1700s. My father went to the first college in the world that was a free public college. That's the City College, now City University of New York. Didn't have to pay a dime, got a wonderful education. He didn't become a tailor like his father. Instead, he became a school principal, and actually a school principal for Congressman Serrano when he came to the mainland from Puerto Rico. That is our tradition. Our tradition is making children, helping children to be all that they can be. The only way that you can do that effectively is through universal public education, meeting all of the relevant standards. In my opinion, to do anything else verges on child abuse. What am I trying to do for my 5 children? I'm trying to make sure that they can be all they can be. I need the public schools to do that. All 5 of my children went to public school. Now, in the case of my children, the elementary school that my oldest one went to, that was in trailers. My younger ones went to exactly the same public school, except they went to a brick school with air conditioning. And the difference between those 2 times, the beginning and the end there, was me. I brought an extra $100 million to Orange County schools, an extra $50 million to Osceola schools, and by the way, an extra $50 million to Lake County schools, extra, and built that schoolhouse and many others like it, because children deserve the best.
Thank you for that. I will jump in with the next question. It's about health insurance. About 11% of Floridians lack health insurance, and that's well above the national average. And many people attribute that to that Florida is one of the very few states that refuse to expand Medicaid. Is it time for Republicans to reconsider their opposition to expansion? And what other help can lawmakers offer Floridians who make too much for Medicaid but are shut out of the healthcare marketplace? And we will start with Ms. Arrington.
Thank you for the question, Jay. Short answer first, yes, Republicans should relook at it. It's unfortunate, though, when you say the words Medicaid expansion, it has kind of a trigger effect with them or whatever. So I think we would need to rebrand it or for them to get there. But we have made some very tiny incremental changes during my last 4 years in the legislature, where expanding opportunities for children and also for minority mothers. So I think if we keep looking at little ways to make incremental changes, we can do that with Republicans. But I think, unfortunately, because of the politicizing with Medicaid expansion, just like our governor refusing it, not be looking at that currently. What I will say is, thankfully for Floridians, just as they are coming to the ballots in 2024 for Amendment 3 and Amendment 4, Floridians are working to get Medicaid expansion on the ballot for 2026. I saw a newspaper article that $250,000 was just donated this last month to go towards those efforts. So once again, when Governor DeSantis and the Republican supermajority does a failure, Floridians step up. So I'm happy to be supportive of that initiative, and I think that we all need to rally behind that and get it. But in the meantime, we can continue to work with Republicans to make some small changes along the way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grayson.
Well, I voted for an extra $70 billion to come to Florida under Medicaid expansion. And the general expansion of healthcare to cover everybody who is sick and needs to see a doctor to stay alive or just to be healthy. We are the only industrialized country in the entire world that fails to do that. Now, when I was elected, 20% of the people here locally, including 40% of the Hispanics, by the way, had no health coverage, could not see a doctor when they were sick. When I left office, it was down to 12. And that is despite the Republicans acting crazy over this, just crazy. What they're doing, as I said, is cutting other people's noses to spite their face. They're not saying, we don't want your health care. They're saying they can't have your health care. And in place of that, they're doing what I said on the floor of Congress. They're instituting the Republican health care plan. Don't get sick. And if you do get sick, die quickly. It is a shame and a sin to say that other people can't see a doctor when they're sick. 20% of the workforce in Florida is in healthcare. Not surprising given the fact that we have the oldest population in the country. 20% of the workforce was cheated out of $70 billion by the Republicans in Tallahassee. 1 million people could not see a doctor when they were sick for the past 15 years. This is criminal. Harvard studies show that of those 1 million people, 1,000 die each year because they don't have health care, not for any other reason, just because they don't have health care. So we had 15,000 people in Florida die because of this decision by the Republicans, and they've robbed us of the $70 billion that goes to California, goes to New York, out of our pockets. Our tax money goes to all these other states, and we don't get any of it. It is the worst public policy decision in Florida history.
Thank you for that answer. Ms. Torres, over to you.
Totally agree. Totally agree. And it's pretty sad that we have, unfortunately, continue to give away our federal dollars to some of the state. For as long as I can remember, these Republican governors have resisted expanding Medicaid, just like they resist everything else. You know, the bullet train, Medicaid expansion. We're only one of 9 states that have not expanded Medicaid. And we have over 1.2 million or something, uninsured in the state of Florida. I think it's a disgrace. And, I just read the other day that they're also rejecting millions of dollars in federal food aid. I don't know what's going on in the state, but it's definitely not helping the constituents and Floridians across the board. So we unfortunately, we are at the mercy of the supermajority and the governor who refused to, expand Medicaid. There are other things that are happening right now in some of these counties. I think I heard in Gainesville, they passed a resolution for not Medicaid, but Medicare for all. This is what's happening in this state. They're little by little chipping here, chipping there, trying to make sure that people understand that we need coverage, that we need the children to get their shots, that we need people to be healthy. And the only way to do it is by expanding Medicaid or having Medicare for all. And I believe that if we did that, we would probably save a lot of money, not only in the care, but a healthy worker. Thank you. All right. It's a productive work.
So over the past several years, Florida has seen multiple controversies along the lines of what many describe as culture wars. Lawmaking centered on transgender individuals, the removal of books from public schools, and prohibiting discussion of gender identity and sexual orientation in most grades. Do you think these debates have been a productive use of legislative time? What can Democrats do to get past this debate? Start with Mr. Grayson.
Well, take a look at the signs that we've put out through the district, and you'll see what I think we should be talking about. The fundamental purpose of government is not to scapegoat people or to single people out or to, I don't know, what do you want to call it, look down on people. That's not what government is all about. Government is about creating opportunities and solving problems that we can only solve together. So what's my platform? My platform is higher pay, especially for the 20% of the workforce that actually works for the state and local government. Lower insurance, and I could go on and on about that. Lower taxes, lower tolls, and lower rent. That's what I would try to accomplish. I am not going to police bathrooms. One of my more famous speeches in Congress was about this particular subject. and how what really is needed for us is simply for us to all act like responsible adults and stop obsessing over hating other people just because they're different. The things that make us different are the things that make us special. And they're to be cherished, not looked down upon. So yes, the answer is yes. What's happened is that the Republicans have latched onto this idea that if they stir up enough hatred and fear, hatred regard to people who are different from you, like the transgendered, and fear toward the border or whatever other fear they want to instill in people, they can avoid doing anything useful. And what I mean by that is making a better life for everybody. That's what we need to be doing. You know, I can't make, as a human being myself, my insurance policy less expensive, but state senators can do that. I can't make the tolls go down, but state senators can do that. These are the things that we need to be focusing on. We need to be focusing on problems that actually have solutions. That's the job of an elected official.
Thank you for that. Ms. Torres, what are your thoughts? You're on mute, Ms. Torres.
Sorry about that. It's a shame that, you know, this is what we've come to, right? I grew up in a melting pot. And honestly, I never felt, you know, discriminated upon and denied anything when I grew up in New York. And it's incredible to me that this, in 2024, this is where we're at with diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's preposterous. They want to ban books. They banned one of my favorite heroes, Roberto Clemente, a baseball book. Come on, give me a break. You know, honestly, I feel like it's the dumbing down of our students. And also, this is affecting people across the board, you know. And why pick a fight with the entity that actually has the largest, you know, employees here, Disney, over, you know, diversity is totally, you know, absurd. And we need to do better. You know, there's so many other things that are more important in life, you know, than picking a fight and trying to do away with diversity. I mean, come on. This country is built, you know, by immigrants, was built by immigrants, and we have such a melting pot of people that it's absurd just to, you know, live and listen to what occurs on a daily basis in Florida regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's absurd.
Thank you. Ms. Arrington?
Thank you, Julie. And the answer to your question is, it is most definitely not a good use of our time. In fact, it's just like Mr. Grayson said, it's a distraction. And if you look at the timing when a bill is dropped and maybe then when the governor goes and signs, you know, legislation that's pro-gun, there's this whole maneuvering system that's being done just to distract Floridians by this legislation. And it's embarrassing as a Florida girl, when I go other places, it's embarrassing when I say I'm from Florida and they say, yeah, we've seen you on the news. All these culture wars are the ones that are on the news and, you know, unfortunately have to be settled by the courts because of the uneven numbers in the legislature. What Democrats can do is when those bad bills come, what's more fun than passing a bill is killing a bill. So even though we have passed some horrible legislation this last year, we were able to stop some things. That's what's great usually about the Senate is they're a little bit more logical. And when they're crazy over in the House, the Senate is able to stop stuff. It just hasn't been the case, unfortunately, with the uneven in numbers. So looking forward to going to the Senate so I can help fight and stop some of that legislation. But Democrats, I do want to say, have been productive. We get certain things on the record. So when these court cases come to battle, these things are on the record, and then we're able to beat DeSantis in the court battles. But we need to get back to the items and the problems that are facing everyday Floridians, the property insurance crisis, affordable housing, and less time on the road, and stop getting distracted by the Republicans' distractions, so to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Grayson mentioned this, and it is definitely something that is on everybody's minds. Florida residents pay more and in many cases get less from their property insurance policies. Lawmakers have been dragged back to Tallahassee multiple times to try to fix it, but there's been no real fix in sight if you're an insurance consumer as opposed to an insurance company. What is your plan for fixing Florida's property insurance market for the consumers? And since you have mentioned it earlier, Mr. Grayson, can you start us out on that?
Sure. This circumstance happens because the Republicans in Tallahassee have cut the law into little pieces and sold it off to the highest bidder. The reason why we pay the price for that is because we're the suckers. We're the people who the lobbyists get rich off of by passing enormous amounts of higher expenses onto us. And that manifests itself in different ways, all of which are solvable problems. First, Citizens, the so-called public insurance company in the state, made $750 million a year in profit. A government entity made $750 million a year in profit. That sounds like socialism. And in addition to that, cheated, overcharged every one of its customers by $500. So let's start with that. That's an easy fix. You just simply say that a public institution is not allowed to make a profit on the backs of the insured in this state. Secondly, you continue the good work that I did while I was in Congress to spread the risk for natural disasters. We have a national flood insurance program. I took steps and laid the foundation for extending that to wind damage, hurricane damage, even earthquake damage, and tornado damage. You can accomplish that through federal legislation. You can also accomplish that through interstate compacts, something that we haven't even tried to do. So what we need to do is to share the risk, because that actually is what insurance is. It's sharing the risk. The problem is that we don't share the risk with others. We absorb it all ourselves, and there's no need for that. In addition to that, the reinsurance system that has been instituted by statute is insane. Most reinsurance money goes to Warren Buffett, one of the richest people in the entire country. The insurance companies take money from us and give it to the reinsurance companies because the law requires that they reinsure against 130-year risks. As one of the Florida, Miami congressmen has noted, if you simply change that to insuring against only 50-year risks, the reinsurance rates would plunge, the insurance rates would plunge, we'd save an awful lot of money, billions. So these are some of the things that I would do to make the insurance system fair, rational, and stop cheating us.
Thank you so much. Ms. Torres, what would you do about the property insurance market?
So, it's really funny that we had a full session and then we had two special sessions, right, that proceeded. And it cost us about $3 billion because all they did was bail out the insurance companies, and they didn't stop any of the cancellations. They didn't do anything about the rates for homeowners. So what did they do? Nothing. We need to, support to reduce these insurance costs and stop bailing out the insurance companies. I mean, at minimum, they could have frozen the rates, right? Until the market, kind of maybe stabilized. And Citizens Insurance Company, it's not going to cut it. If we have a horrible hurricane come through, we have about 1.3 million people. I don't even know how many at this point on Citizens. I don't see them covering anybody. It's just not going to happen. And so we have to, mitigate and, we have to do something about possibly establishing some caps or, relax some of these future increases. But we have to do something for the people. They did absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. We have to go back to the table. We have to, have Republicans and Democrats come back to the table and find some concrete solutions. We cannot continue bailing out insurance companies and having constituents, policies lapse or canceled as a result. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Arrington, I believe you're next.
Thank you so much. So unfortunately, the wrong people have been at the table working on this legislation the last few years because we've had the insurance companies at the table. And so many of the changes that you have seen have been a benefit to them. We were told to give it a few years and we will see some reductions, but we have not seen that, and we are approaching a few years. I will say one positive thing we did this last session was waive the fees and additional costs that are on the bottom of the bill, but that's only going to bring a savings of about $40 per policy. So it would have been great if we could have done that years ago, but we need to keep on working on ways to bring the costs down. Caps or a freeze, any of the above, it's impossible currently for someone to budget or plan for next year's bills when you don't know what that number is. And when that number in that bill arrives, you just have to pay that cost. That's impossible to do to hardworking Floridians and also to businesses. What we really need is, because we need a focus on it. You've seen the last couple of years, our Senate president focused on the Live Local Act and the Live Healthy Act to help with affordable housing and to help with our healthcare industry, but there's been no focus for property insurance. The positive news is everyone in Florida knows this is the issue and they keep telling their representatives. So I'm hoping that folks bring this to the ballot box as well and keep letting them know so we can all work together. The last session we did, I think, like a 30-minute panel with a Republican who is lost his house in a hurricane and has not got recovery and is fighting with his insurance company. And also a Democrat, Hillary Cassell, who fights the insurance companies daily in her day job. We need to have more conversations with that for the people that are dealing with it on the front line from all sides to bring solutions to folks, but we need to look at ways to freeze and cap their prices. And we need to make sure that insurance companies that are coming to Florida and profiting off of Floridians can't just do it on car insurance, that if they're providing other insurance, that they have to provide homeowners insurance as well. Thank you.
Thank you. We are getting very close to the time that we've allotted for this. We have a lot more questions, but I know that we all also have other obligations. So what I'd like to do in just a minute is to ask each of you to give us a closing statement. But first, I'd like to remind our readers that we will be making an endorsement in this race, but we don't want that to be the only thing you consider. When you look at each of these candidates, they have vibrant web presences, social media. Of course, our excellent news coverage will be giving you more information. So take a look at each of these candidates for the Democratic nominee for this race, to go on and face the Republican primary winner in November, and find the person who best fits your values and your hopes for this district. And make sure and vote in the August 20th primary. Early voting starts soon as well. And with that, we are going to go to closing statements. Mr. Grayson, would you get us started, please?
Thank you for the forum. I appreciate the opportunity, and I think it's been very helpful to clarify for the voters what matters the most, which is this: who will do the best job for you? That's really what it's all about. And we have had countless occasions here in Central Florida where we elect people to office and they do nothing. Sometimes less than nothing. Sometimes they actually hurt the community. That wasn't true when I was in Congress. When I was in Congress, Orlando, when I started, was the largest city in the country without a VA hospital. Now we have a VA hospital. It was funded in my first term I got it funded by the Obama administration. My second term was built. My third term, we opened it, and it serves thousands of people, and it's created thousands of jobs here in Central Florida. We extended the Sunrail system from the, shall I say, white area of town into the minority area of town, $180 billion to go on top of the $650 million. Sorry, $180 million to go on top of the $650 million that came from the VA hospital. An additional $1 billion in road improvement that we moved up and up and up and up through DOT, which is actually a very effective way to bring money into the district. You deal with the bureaucrats in the administration, and you make sure that your priorities are their priorities as well. And that's something we haven't even discussed today. The bottom line is that you deserve something for your vote. Your vote is your power. It's the only way that you have to make the world a better place and to help to control the things that you can't control yourself, and to make sure that you have the things you need in life. An education for you and your children that's affordable, a free public education, healthcare that's there when you need it to help you stay alive and to stay healthy. These are my priorities. These are the things that I accomplished when I was in Congress, and these are the things that I can accomplish in the state Senate. It's not about me. It's about you and how your life can get better. And if you agree with that principle, then vote for Alan Grayson for state Senate.
Thank you. Ms. Torres.
So I want to thank you for the opportunity. I just want to say that this is the last majority Hispanic Democratic seat in the Senate. And I'm the only Hispanic Democratic candidate in this race who speaks both English and Spanish and can communicate with all the constituents that we represent in this district. And since I am retired, I am able to serve as a full-time senator, while my opponents have outside employment and businesses will be part-time. There's really no difference, right, between me and my opponents on the major issues. The biggest difference is how we will represent the district and the state. And I am running to serve my community, and my opponents are running to serve their own personal and political self-interest. And so that's why, I received the support of 11 of the 12 state senators, and also Congressman Maxwell Frost, numerous Democratic community and labor organizations, all of which are listed on my website, carmentorresforflorida.com. And I hope to earn the endorsement of the Orlando Sentinel and the support of the residents of District 25 to be the next senator. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Representative Arrington, will you wrap us up, please?
Thank you so much. And thank you, Chris, Jay, and Julie for having us today. Really appreciate the opportunity. And do want to take a moment just to thank my constituents back home for electing me to serve them at the state level. It has truly been my honor to serve my hometown in Tallahassee for the last 4 years. And I'm honored to serve this district because I attended elementary, middle, high school, and college right here, and started my own business and even met my husband. And although Republicans do have all the power in Tallahassee, I have never given up the fight for our values. And despite Democrats not having power in numbers, I've been able to pass and sponsor meaningful bipartisan legislation to help our students be workforce ready, to help our veterans and their surviving spouses purchase property, to help those that live in HOAs have transparency, to help our small businesses in downtown Kissimmee thrive, and to protect our first responders and their families. I've also brought home funding for affordable housing for many multiple motel hotel conversions, funding to protect our firefighters, funding to help with flooding. And this last session, two of my more important appropriations was bringing home money for housing for our homeless veterans and those that are battling addiction. As your next senator, I will continue the fight for women's reproductive rights. I will fight to ensure that families and those that want to own homes that can. I will continue to stand up to our insurance companies and the price gouging that they're doing to us. I will work to ensure that we have high-paying job training opportunities. And I will always stand up to the book bans and attacks on our public education. If you make me your senator, I promise that I will make you proud. And please visit arringtonforflorida.com to learn more. Thank you so much.
I want to thank all of you. It's been a really informative discussion, and I really wish we could have gotten to more questions, but I think that we did hit quite a few priorities for Floridians. And I just want to remind everybody that August 20th is coming up. So get ready to vote.